All right, folks, let's get started. Thanks so much for your interest in tonight's info session on continuing education. My name is Shelby Sargo. I am the current acting manager of quality programs at the college. Also on with us are two other members of staff. Jocelyn Facey is our communications coordinator, who's going to be helping keep an eye on Q&A tonight. If you want to say hi, Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone.
Perfect. And also with us is our manager of informatics and information technology, Eddie Cho, who's going to be making sure everything's technologically running smoothly.
Hello, good evening.
Perfect. So before we get started, you'll note that we are using Zoom webinar for this info session, so you won't have access to your normal video and mic as you would in a Zoom meeting. However, you do have access to a chat function, which is self-explanatory there, as well as a Q&A function where you can type in your questions. That'll come directly to myself and Jocelyn. I'll encourage you to make use of the Q&A box for your questions, just so that they don't get lost anywhere in the chat. Yeah, let's get started. So here's a look at what we're going to be going over. We'll start with just a broad continuing education or CE overview. Then we'll get into our current CE policy that outlines your CE requirements for the current cycle and the deadlines for that. We'll then look at the other learning opportunities, which is a new kind of category for 2021. The three-year cycle started in 2021. Then we'll quickly touch on the difference between the current policy and the previous CE policies, just for those of you who have been registered for more than a few years. And we'll end with some tips on using OE Tracker and the ARBA website, which hopefully you'll find helpful. So continuing education is a component of the college's quality assurance program. It's something that we have as per the Regulated Health Professions Act in order to promote continuing competence and continuing quality improvement, address changes in practice environments, and incorporate standards of practice, advances in technology, changes to competencies, and other relevant issues. So that's sort of the purpose of it. The CE component is something that all members have to engage with. So regardless if you have practicing status or non-practicing status, your CE requirements and your CE deadlines are all the same. And it's important to note that the college's CE component runs on a 3-year cycle, not an annual cycle. So there's not anything necessarily you have to complete by the end of each year. Rather, it's 3 years to complete your requirements. And the current cycle that we're in right now began on January 1st, 2021, and is going to go until December 31st, 2023. So the current CE policy that outlines your CE requirements is as follows. So the current cycle, members must complete a minimum of 70 CE hours related to the maintenance of standards of practice or continuing competence. 50 of these hours must be accredited by the Council on Optometric Practitioner Education, or COPE. 20 of those COPE hours must also be in topics related to ocular disease and management or related systemic disease. And the remaining 20 of those 70 hours can either be COPE accredited, if that's something that you're in the habit or prefer to take, that sort of structured learning, or they can be other learning opportunities, and that we'll get into that in just a moment. So it's important to note this is obviously the minimum amount of continuing education hours that you are to complete. You are welcome to complete as many hours above that you find beneficial to your practice. I will note though, however, if you do go over the 70, there's no carrying over of CE hours into the future cycle. So if you did 100 hours within this cycle, you can't carry any of those forwards into the 2024 cycle. So you'll note I have an asterisk there on members, just to speak to those members who are newer registrants. So members first registered during the cycle have a prorated numbers of CE hours to complete. So if you've registered in 2021, your total number of CE hours to complete by the end of the cycle in 2023 is 47 total hours. 34 of which should be COPE accredited. The remaining 13 can be COPE or other. If you registered in 2022, which is the second year of the 3-year cycle, you have to complete 24 CE hours, 17 of which should be COPE accredited, and the remaining 7 can be COPE or other. And you'll note in the COPE category there, the number in parentheses is the number of hours that should be in topics reasonably related to ocular disease and management, or related systemic disease. So it's important to note, if you're a newer registrant, that you can only claim hours that you've completed after your date of registration. So if you were registered September 1st of 2022, you can only count CE hours towards your requirements that you completed that date till the end of the cycle, and not ones that you completed in 2021 or before your date of registration. And I'll just note, for anyone registering in 2023, you are not required to complete any CE hours by the end of the cycle. Since you're registering so late in that period, you'll just be required at the start of the next cycle to complete the full amount of hours. So I wanted to just touch on other learning opportunities, because COPE is quite, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what the COPE accredited courses are, but other learning opportunities is something that's newer for this CE cycle in the policy. So it includes things such as organized events, reading of professional journals, online activities that are non-COPE. Previously, we had category A equivalencies such as supervising optometry students, so all of those can now count as other learning opportunities. The main thing to keep in mind with regards to those is that everything that can count towards another learning opportunity must be related to the maintenance of your standards of practice or continuing competence. And there's not a certificate needed, which is a change from the previous CE policy. As you'll note, things like reading a professional journal or some activities may not have a certificate. So instead of having that piece of proof, you just need to fill in an other learning opportunities form, which can be found on the continuing education webpage on the college website. So it's a bit more flexible. Things that didn't used to count, such as, reading refereed articles, can now count towards your CE requirements. So just for understanding, I'll go really quickly and compare kind of previously what the CE policies requirements were and where we are now, just for everyone's understanding. I'm sure most of you have been registered prior to just last year. So previously, we had categories A and B. You'll recall it was still 70 total hours, but 50 of them were category A and 20 could be A or could be B. So we've moved, as I've mentioned, to 50 COPE accredited hours and 20 which can be other. So I'll touch on it briefly because we've received some questions about it. So the reason for the move to COPE, it's a recognized accreditation program for optometric CE courses. It was something that would we could ensure that our optometrists are participating in high quality and meaningful CE. There's set accreditation criteria that COPE has in order to accredit an activity, including incorporating certain activities that meet educational needs, analyzing changes in learners. There's set standards for commercial support, which ensures independence in the CE activities. And COPE has also been deemed substantially equivalent to the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education, which accredits organizations that provide CE to physicians. So that was kind of the thinking there. And with that came the kind of additional flexibility within those 20 other hours. So the remaining 20 hours and the parameters around that have been relaxed in order to provide members with a wider range of options in order to make individual selections as to what meets your learning needs and your learning style. And so it's been a bit more of a self-directed options within that kind of side of the CE. there. You'll see there below, again, we had category A and B. So instead of that, now we have the other learning opportunities, which again counts things that used to be non-COPE category A, category B, those equivalencies that I talked about, like supervising students. It now includes reading of professional journals and all other non-COPE accredited types of learning. You'll note before, if you were registered previously, we had different requirements for in-person and online category A. Now that there is just COPE, there's all all consistency across the format. So you're welcome to take all of your continuing education virtually if that's something that works for you. You'll also note that those equivalencies that I talked about used to be limited to 35 hours per cycle. Now that we only have the 20 hours allotted for other, you're limited to doing only 20 hours of those equivalencies from before. And then this one with regards to the topic requirements. So it used to be that you needed to complete a minimum of 20 hours in lecture-based ocular disease and management or related systemic disease. This has been removed. The lecture-based has been removed to provide a greater flexibility in course formats. So lecture-based meaning, a live or even live from a distance, but live virtually, I mean. Now you can take things that are fully asynchronous. Those things can sort of count, as well as the limitation previously that we had on a maximum of 10 practice management hours. That's also been removed in order to allow optometrists to participate in topics related to ethics and practice management, things like infection prevention control, as much as is relevant to your practice. And if you have I've received some questions with regards to what ocular disease and topics reasonably related to ocular disease and management or related systemic disease. And that's something that can be found on the COPE website. They have a breakdown of their categories as to what that means. We have a link to it on our continuing education webpage on the college website as well. And maybe a little later I can pop a link to that into the chat, just if you have any questions about what that means. And lastly, is with regards to the participation certificates. So previously, all of your CE needed some sort of proof document or a certificate of completion. Now, obviously, your COPE courses will still have that certificate. However, your other learning opportunities don't need to have certificate necessarily. You just need to fill out an other learning opportunities form and submit that to ARBO, which again can be found on the continuing education area of the website. So I've been talking for a bit there. I'll ask Jocelyn if we've had some questions come in. Maybe we can touch on a few of those. If you have questions about anything I've said or specific situations with regard to your CE requirements, we'll touch on those now.
Okay, so we have several questions regarding what experiences count for CE hours. So the first question that we had is, are medical ethics articles or learning seminars allowed towards CE credit?
Sorry, so our medical ethics articles and learning seminars, absolutely. So articles and things that are non-COPE accredited, exactly as you said, other types of seminars can definitely count towards your other learning opportunities. For things that you have read in a refereed journal, those can be, just keep track of the titles and things like that, so you can fill out your form accordingly and keep track of what you've been reading. And same with any sort of organized events. So seminars and things like that aren't COPE accredited necessarily can still count towards your other learning opportunities. Just be sure to fill out one of those other learning opportunities forms and keep track of your dates and what the kind of topic of discussion and the title of anything that you went to. And certainly they can count towards your other section.
Okay, so another question. Is there a minimum CE credit per cycle that needs to be met? And I don't know if they mean per cycle or per year, so maybe answer both of those.
Yeah, so there's not, so per year, you don't have to complete anything in particular. If there's a year that there's a lot of learning that you want to do, or there's time in your life to pursue that, then that's the year that you can do lots, or you can do it throughout. But the main thing to do is that by the end of the cycle to have completed your 70 CE hours. So you can complete them at any point during those 3 hours, whether it's all in the first year, all in the last year, or throughout. But it's any time within that 3-year period you need to complete it, and we only go in and review that information after a cycle has finished. So as long as it's learning that you're done doing by the end of the cycle, then that's perfect.
Perfect. Several people are asking if my credit is on Arbo Tracker, do I have to do anything else after that?
Good question. No. So if it's in OE Tracker, and I'll go over a couple things in just a minute with regards to OE Tracker, but if you're seeing the activities you've taken already in your OE Tracker transcript, that's all we need to see on our end to see that you've completed it. So yeah, no, nothing needs to be any further than it being in Arbo, because they verify certificates and things on their end there.
Okay, another question. So does previous category B now count as the COPE, even though we didn't get a COPE certificate, or does it now count as other?
So previous category B would have been non-COPE accredited, so they can count towards your other. So those would have been other types of structured learning. So other types of courses or things that you may have taken before are now for other learning opportunities. If it's COPE accredited, the activity is going to have a COPE ID. So that is a string of about 6 or so, I'm not quite sure, 6 or so numbers and maybe some letters that is will tell you that it's been accredited, and you're always welcome to follow up with the CE provider of an activity to see if that's something that to verify things, and if it's going to be accredited, if it's not already, or what the COPE ID is. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of people have asked this one actually. So if I have a student applying to optometry school and they are shadowing me, is that considered another learning opportunity or an other learning opportunity?
So I'll have to double check. The policy is pretty specific as to what supervising students mean, because I think, sorry, Justin, if you could, was it someone who's applying to school? They're not yet
applying to optometry school and they're shadowing one of the optometrists.
Got it. So I'd have to refer back to the policy, because I'm pretty sure it's quite clear as to supervising students, not those who are planning to enter the profession potentially. But yeah, refer to there's a chart on the second page of the current CE policy, which you can find on the continuing education webpage on the website, that will have it more specifically in text. And if there's any sort of ambiguity that needs further clarification from there, then you're welcome to, we can help you with that.
Okay. If we upload a certificate for other learning opportunity to Arbo, do we also need to fill out the other learning opportunity form?
Yeah, so anything that's being submitted as other should have the other learning opportunities form with it. You don't necessarily need to submit a certificate for those hours. As I said, as long as you filled in the details on that form, that's enough for Arbo to then verify and upload to your OE Tracker account. So I would say to emphasize the other learning opportunities form, because that's what Arbo, I think, is used to for non-COPE stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have time for a couple more?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so one person said, my OE Tracker says the subscription has expired. Does the college renew this automatically, or do I need to do this?
Good question. So the college for this current cycle is covering the cost of OE Tracker subscription. So no one should be expired, because we renew everyone at the beginning of the year. So that shouldn't be the case. I know there was a few instances where I brought that. Other members had said the same sort of thing, and they brought it to Arbo's attention, and they had given direction to kind of log out, log in, and see if that fixes it, because everyone should have their OE Tracker still current until the new year, when we will renew it again. So I would try a few things there, and email arbo@arbo.org if you still find issues, because every one of our members should be covered that fee. And definitely I don't pay the fee if it is telling you that, just because I don't think it's refundable. So we'll handle that if you're still experiencing issues, because we are covering it.
Okay. One person asked, when a news cycle begins, will my ARBO transcript reset, or do I need to keep track of via the dates it was added by?
Good question. Yeah, it doesn't reset. So it keeps track of every course that you've taken and that's been uploaded there. How it works, and I'll show a little bit in just a minute when I talk about more about OE Tracker. You essentially, it keeps all record of everything that's been uploaded, but you would just narrow it down by the cycle. So if you just want to look at, when you're looking at a transcript, just what you've taken for this cycle, you would then enter the parameters as, you know, the beginning date of the cycle, January 1st of the year, and then the end of the 3 years later year. And that would show you what you've done in that cycle. Just as if you wanted to see what you did years ago, you can enter those parameters as well, and it'll have that information for you in OE Tracker.
Sure. Okay, so a couple of people have been asking where they can find certain forms. Can you just direct them on our website where they can find all the forms that they need for CE?
Yes, so maybe what I'll do, actually, because I think, seeing if I have it open here, I can just maybe put a link in the chat. I've been mentioning that one webpage for a few things. Let me see if I can copy it. Yeah, I'll copy it in just a minute. Just once I'm done, before we go, I'll put a link in the chat. But it's essentially, if you go to the college website and you go to the members area, there's a section there that says continuing education. And on that page, you're going to find things like the other learning opportunities form that you need to have. You'll find there's lots of FAQs there to answer some more information. There's the full policy itself if you ever need to refer back to it. So that's a really good page to kind of return back to for all types of CE information. So just the college website and then members continuing education.
Wonderful. And I will ask one last but important one. Does this lecture count for CE credit?
No, so this is really just an info session to help you all with your understanding of your CE requirements, so that you can make sure you're selecting the right stuff and are finishing well ahead of the end of the CE cycle.
That's perfect. There's some more, but we can also wait if you want to continue the rest of the presentation for now. What would you like to do?
Yeah, we'll come back to some questions. I see there's a few more. I'll just go over really quick because there's already been some questions with regards to OE Tracker. Just some things on that side that I think will be helpful there. So let's do that, and then after we'll shoot some more questions before we head out. So here we are. Okay, so as you know, we just went over what your CE requirements are and when you have to complete them by. But in addition to that, you must also ensure all of your CE hours are reported in OE Tracker, because that's the only way that we will know that you did all of those continuing education hours. So some CE providers report certain completion to OE Tracker on your behalf. And so just be aware that that may take a few weeks. I think there's a period of time that providers have before they have to send everything into ARBO. So just know that, but keep in mind that it's your responsibility to verify that everything, the courses you've been taking are being successfully reported and uploaded to your OE Tracker. So I would say check regularly after you've taken certain activities, just to make sure everything is as it should be. And if there is anything missing several weeks after you've completed it, you can always follow up with that CE provider if they were to report it on your behalf, or you can then manually submit your certificate completion, for example, for a COPE course manually. And that way you can make sure nothing gets missed or falls between the cracks. So you don't want something, you know, in 1 year and then after the cycle seeing that it didn't get uploaded and then you're under the minimum requirement. So that's just something to keep in mind. And as we've touched on, the other learning opportunities, must have a completed form sent to arvo@arvo.org. And that's right on the form, just where to send it and what to do with it. A few tips that I received from Arvo with regards to CE providers who are uploading hours on your behalf or reporting hours on your behalf is to make sure that you are aware of your OE tracker number, not just your registration number, and ensure that your OE tracker number is what's provided to the CE provider, just to avoid any issues with reporting. I guess they've had people maybe give the wrong number and then it doesn't get seen on their transcript. So make sure you're giving a CE provider that's going to upload or report your course completions for you. Make sure you give them your OE tracker number, not your registration number. And with regards to the other learning opportunities, there's a section on the form that has, the title of the activity. So whether that's a seminar you attended, non-COAP, or it's a journal that you've read, an article you've read, make sure when you're typing the title, it's exactly how you want it to show up on your transcript. So instead of just typing glaucoma, make sure it's, identifying glaucoma and blah, blah, that sort of thing, just so that way, when you look at your transcript, what's being reflected there, just because some people, I guess, type a little more shorthand. So that's just something to keep in mind with regards to the other learning opportunities form. So there's two ways to access OE Tracker. One is through their app. It's a very kind of simplified version of the website. It's easy to see your course history. If you're interested in that link there has more information, including instructions on how to use the app. And then there's the website, of course, to log in. You can see the link on the screen. So once you log in, and just to clarify as well, your username and password, regardless if it's the app or the website, are the same. If you forget your password or anything, there's a spot on the login page to reset it. So once you're logged in, you should see a version of what's on screen here with several different options. If you go to view/update my profile, you can update things like your email address that you want to have on file, and other sorts of personal information like that. A great place to start when you're on the home page here, you'll see about halfway down the option to view my CE analysis. And that's a really great place to start because one, it shows you when the current CE cycle begins and ends, which can be helpful, for you're not quite sure, are we in year 2 or is the cycle ending? That's a good place that'll tell you exactly what cycle we're in and how far we are into that cycle. And it also shows you, just at a high level, kind of a summary of all the CE hours you've completed for the cycle, including a breakdown by the different course categories. So it's a good place to start, just to have a snapshot of how many hours have I completed? Have I done 70 yet? That sort of thing, as well as obviously when the deadline is, but hopefully December 31st, 2023. Everyone knows that now. So the other place, if you want to go for a more detailed look at all the different courses you've taken during the CE cycle, like I said, to make sure everything's being uploaded correctly, you'll go to view my CE transcript there in the middle of your options. You're going to have to, it'll give you the option to set date parameters for that. So you'll want to make sure you're just looking at CE for the current 3-year, because it'll show you if you have ones prior to 2020, it'll show you those as well, which may be a little confusing when you're making sure you did your 70 at this certain period. So you'll type in, January 1st or 1/1/2021 until 12/31, December 31st, 2023, and then it'll populate everything that you've taken, and you can see course by course, both COAP and non-COAP, everything you've completed during that period there. So again, another tip. So we encourage you not to wait, of course, till the end of the CE cycle or the last month of the CE cycle to be completing and really uploading your CE, just because Arvo has a much slower processing time during that period. Just so try to be ahead of that window, just so that it's all finished before the end of 2023. And again, try to kind of just get in the habit of checking your CE hours and OE Tracker periodically, just to ensure everything's being accounted for, just to make sure you've met to all of your minimums and there's nothing being missed after the fact, because all of the hours again need to be completed during the cycle. Once, 2023 is over, we're then in the next cycle. So it's important to keep an eye on that and make sure you're completing and uploading your CE hours so that we can be aware of it. And I've just made a note that, after the fact, when we look and see who has met their minimums, if anyone who has not met their minimum CE requirements is required to undergo a practice assessment as per the registration regulation. So those are a few tips on OE Tracker. I just had one last thing before we get into a few questions, because I thought it was maybe helpful, hopefully, is with regards to the ARBO website and specifically finding COPE courses. So I'm sure most of you maybe have a place where you like to do continuing education. But if they're ever in a situation where you need more COPE hours, or you're looking for, COPE accredited courses in a certain topic, the ARBO website has a database of every activity, that's accredited. It's a good place, one, if you're searching just to kind of get ideas as to what courses you can take, but it's also good if you're ever, verifying if something is accredited or not. So you're looking to take a course, you think, is this going to be COPE accredited or not? You can search by part of a title or by the lecturer and things like that. And then if it's accredited, it will be on the COPE in the COPE database with a COPE ID, and then that you can verify that sort of information. So I'll really quick just switch my share screen, I think. Okay, so if you go to the ARBO website really quick to find the course search, you'll go to COPE and then course search. So it'll bring up this window, as I said. So if you're looking to verify something, you can search a specific title and make sure it's COPE accredited. If you're just looking to browse and see where you can do different courses on different subjects, you can search by a variety of subjects, search by different formats. So, you have live, you have online and during. So those are, asynchronous types of activities you can do, online interactive. So it's virtual, but it's live, different things like that. You can browse here. And when you do a search, it should bring up a whole list of activities. You can see when they are accredited until, so you want to make sure it's not expired, and you can click on the COPE ID to learn more about that specific course. That'll open a little more detail. It'll confirm how many hours it is, who the instructor is. And if you're looking to take the course, below the course description, there should be an event ID at the bottom there. So if we click that, it's going to tell you where you can, hopefully tell you where you can register for that sort of course. So here you would follow that website and you can hopefully find it from there, or get in contact with that CE provider if that's a specific course you have interest in. So I just wanted to show that just because I think it's a really useful tool if there's something specific you want to learn, or just are looking for more COPE accredited courses. It's a really good resource, and you can kind of sort by, certain hours if you want something that's longer, for example. So that's the last thing I wanted to share. Justin, if you want to hit a few more questions before we wrap up, that would be good.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a standard of minimum 20 hours in ocular disease. Is there a maximum amount allowed for this area of learning, or theoretically, could we do all 70 hours in ocular disease?
Yeah, great question. You can absolutely do all of your hours in that area if that's a certain area that you want to expand upon, or your area of expertise is in that area. Absolutely. There's just set minimums so that just to encourage folks not to take all 50 COPE hours in ethics and different things that may be accredited as well. So it's a minimum, but absolutely you can pursue any of the topic areas beyond that are relevant to your practice in any one year.
Perfect. Is it mandatory to have credits from the other learning opportunities category?
No, really good question. If you are in the habit and you really like structured learning and you already take lots of COPE courses, those can be all of your 70 hours can be COPE. They don't need to be other. That's just an option to have a little more flexibility if there's other types of learning that folks like to do. So if you, print activities or, reading professional journals or different types of activities, but absolutely you can take all 70 hours of COPE if you prefer.
Perfect. Several people are asking about journal articles. Are there details as to which journals are covered, and how do we know how much time would be covered for reading?
That's a very good question as well. That is, I believe, in the policy itself in that large chart on the website. Let me just double check really quickly about that, because I believe it's hour for hour. But let me just not misspeak. Okay. Professional journals. So reading of articles in refereed optometric, ophthalmologic, or medical journals are hour for hour. So if you've spent a full hour reading an article or articles, you can count that as one other learning opportunity CE hour.
Wonderful. And is there anywhere that people can go to see if a journal would be verified or would be approved for hours?
So let me just see here if there's a good way to phrase that. So usually, as long as the journal that's refereed, a refereed journal essentially has a peer review, so peer reviewed articles, refereed journals, professional journals, which just means that the articles have been reviewed by other experts in the field or peers in the field before they're published in the journal.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so someone's asking if we attend the event, which they give us a certificate, and we submit the certificate on Arbo for non-COPE points, do we still need to fill out the other learning form?
If it's already been uploaded in that way to your OE tracker transcript, that's fine. Arbo is in the habit, I think, of receiving those other learning opportunities forms, and that's kind of structurally how I think they're accustomed to receiving those types of hours now that we've switched over. But if you've already had something uploaded that's non-COPE, or if a provider has uploaded a non-COPE course on your behalf, then that's fine. You don't have to submit it again via that way.
Okay. Several people have asked, does the publication of an article in a medical journal count towards the 20 other learning opportunities?
Yes, so I'm just going back to the policy again. So page 2 of the full policy has a lot of these details. So I would encourage everyone to reference that if there's ever something you come across and think is that count. It should hopefully be addressed in there. Again, that's on the continuing education webpage on the college website. But essentially, yeah, so publication of an article in a refereed optometric, ophthalmologic, or medical journal counts for 10 hours of other learning opportunities, and publication of a case report in a referee journal can count for 2 hours of other learning opportunities, CE hours. And that's in that chart on page 2 with the details about how much things count towards.
Perfect, thank you. 2 more questions regarding COPE. One is, can first aid training qualify?
So it doesn't.
Can this also be found in the policy?
It is. It doesn't count towards your COPE accredited hours. I don't think there's that would be COPE accredited, but it can certainly still count towards your other learning opportunities. And it would be, I'm just looking, so 5 hours per cycle. If you've taken a CPR course, can count towards your other learning opportunities.
Okay, the last one, at least for now, would it be okay if all 70 hours are COPE approved with COPE ID?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as I mentioned, if you are in the habit or enjoy taking that sort of more structured learning for all of your CE, you can absolutely have all of your 70 hours be COPE accredited, no problem.
Wonderful. That's all that I have.
Okay. Wonderful. Let me just see here. So I don't know if there's anything that we've missed in the chat or in the Q&A, please do feel welcome to email qa@collegeoptom.on.ca. We're more than happy to clarify any pieces of the policy or have the Quality Assurance Committee clarify if there's something that's not quite described in the policy. We can make sure to help you with that and make sure you're well set up for the rest of the cycle to have everything completed accordingly. Yeah, that's all we had for this evening. So again, thank you so much for logging on and viewing tonight's info session. I'll leave the email there on screen in case anyone wants to send further questions that weren't touched on in this info session. We are happy to assist with that anytime. Thanks so much.